Alright, welcome to this week's episode of Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Got a big guest on this week's episode, international sensation Royce Isaacs, one heck of a professional wrestler. If you haven't heard of this guy yet, you need to check him out. We talked a lot about his how he got into the business, his progression so far in the business, what he's been doing. He even had a tryout with WWE that was amazing. We talked about that. You can see him on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood on the CW. So we talked on numerous topics about his career so far, and he is a super awesome guy. So if you haven't heard of him yet, check him out. Royce Isaacs, international sensation. But I want to first start off and thank everybody that listened last week's episode with Vinny and Phil from Last in Line. Got a lot of great response from that episode. Very cool dudes. Super cool to sit down and share some stories from the road, from their more than combined 80-year career in the rock and roll business. So it was awesome to chat with them. So this week we got Royce Isaacs, international sensation. But first, I want to, before we get to the interview with Royce, is recap Elimination Chamber. I did last week. A second half of the podcast was the Elimination Chamber preview. I want to follow up with a little bit of Elimination Chamber fallout. We are officially on the road to WrestleMania, my favorite time of the year, WrestleMania season. This was the last pay-per-view for the Raw brand, and here we are. We're ready to go and full steam ahead towards WrestleMania 34. A lot has happened in just a week since I last posted the podcast, from Elimination Chamber to everything that's being built up. I think this is going to be one of the better WrestleManias in recent years. A lot of good matches are looking like it's going to be built towards. So I first want to recap Elimination Chamber. Overall, thought it was a good pay-per-view. Was a little skeptical about some of the matches, but I felt it was really good. Really loved the Ronda segment. Really thought that it put forth Ronda is going to be a big superstar. She's going to have a big featured match at WrestleMania this year. So thought it really did its justice. But I'm going to get into all of that here. So the first match we saw was on the pre-show. It was Gallows and Anderson defeated The Miz, Taraj, Bo Dallas, and Curtis Axel. Just kind of a match to kind of get things going. Not really sure what they're doing here with, The Miz, Taraj are kind of jobbers at this point. They're just The Miz's lackeys. So Gallows and Anderson pick up the win. I think this is just kind of building on what we're going to see and what we saw this past Monday night with Finn and The Miz. I think we're going to get that kind of feud with Seth Rollins mixed in for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania. So that's kind of all I think this was doing. But then the main card kicked off, and it was the first ever Women's Elimination Chamber match. This was a hell of a match. I thought, actually, between the men and the women, I thought the women had the better chamber match. You had Alexa Bliss would come out on top. Not a big surprise here. Kind of figured that she was going to carry the title into WrestleMania, but there were some really cool spots. Sonya Deville had a really nice showing, too, from Absolution. And the women did some creative stuff. Sasha climbed up on top of one of the pods and dropped the double knees down. Alexa, when she was the last one to enter out of her pod, she was running around looking scared. She climbed the chamber. Bayley and Sasha kind of cornered her. Sasha turned on Bayley, which I thought was very interesting. And then we saw on Monday night that Bayley kind of turned on Sasha. So I think they're really heating those two up, and we're going to see a feud probably at WrestleMania, a one-on-one match between those two, which is, if you remember from NXT, God, those two girls in the ring, chemistry undeniable. So it's going to be kind of cool there. But Bliss would get the win here. Not real shocked, because she is supposed to carry the title into Mania here. I made that prediction last week and carried it right through. Second match was The Bar, Cesaro and Sheamus taking on Titus Worldwide. Not a shock here. Like I said, figured that they would win. Titus Worldwide is kind of a comedy act at this point, so really couldn't see them winning. So The Bar got the win here. Interesting when they followed it up on Raw that they did a 2 out of 3 falls match. Really wasn't sure why they were doing that, but it looks like The Bar really doesn't have any opponents for Mania. They talked about on Monday in their promo, like, we've faced everybody there is. We've beaten everybody from Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. We've beaten The New Day. We've beaten everybody there is to beat. So who are they going to face at Mania? Not sure. Kind of still thinking the Revival is going to make an appearance there and challenge them, but kind of interesting dynamic since you have heel versus heel. So maybe there's a babyface tag team they bring back or pull up from NXT to maybe challenge the Bar. Then we got, to me, what I thought was the match of the night. Asuka defeated Nia Jax. This was a barn burner, hard-hitting, back and forth. They really did a nice job laying this match out. And it was just back and forth, real hard-hitting action. Loved how they booked the ending of this match. Asuka got the roll-up on Nia. 1, 2, 3, boom. Nia's not added to the match at Mania. But then after, Nia just attacks Asuka, beats her down, spears her right through the barricade. Beautiful job because it keeps both women looking strong. Asuka gets the win, keeps her undefeated streak intact, and gets a little sympathy from the crowd, while Nia looks strong like this big, crazy woman that she is. Boom, you got yourself built up. It looks like Asuka is going to challenge Alexa for the Raw Women's title. I still have a feeling that we may see Asuka challenge Charlotte. They haven't made it clear. They didn't make it clear on Monday either which champion she's going to choose. I think they may be waiting till a couple weeks here, till after the Fastlane pay-per-view, and Charlotte defends her title to have Asuka make her decision. But right now, it looks like they're leaning towards Asuka and Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's title. Then we got the Woken Matt Hardy versus Bray Wyatt match. Kind of interesting here. I thought it was a fairly good match. I thought the mind games that Matt Hardy did at the beginning was very interesting, kind of a different take on it. The crowd there in Vegas did not seem to be into it whatsoever. And they were chanting Rusev Day, they were chanting We Want Beach Balls and everything. They were not into it. Matt Hardy would get the win. Like I said last week on my prediction, I figured he would. Looks like they may be building towards something at Mania and maybe something of doing something at the Hardy compound, and we see Jeff Hardy come back as Brother Nero and the whole broken universe. Could be building towards that, so we're interested to see. And then the final two things were the Ronda contract signing. This was done phenomenal. Out came Kurt Angle, then came Triple H and Stephanie, the Authority. Then Ronda came out. They showed the package of her training and all her highlights of her UFC career and such. And then she came out and basically, was a little bit iffy on the mic, but that was to be expected for, someone who really doesn't know how to cut a promo yet. But I still thought, she handled it well. Really, the MVP of this segment was Triple H. Because Ronda was kind of struggling. The crowd was slowly trying to get in there, but Triple H kept everything moving, kept everybody at their spots where they're supposed to be. So it did a really, really nice job of keeping the segment moving along. What I liked was the switch Ronda had. Kurt kind of did this thing where, Triple H and Stephanie said the reason they wanted to sign you is to hold you down because of the way you embarrassed them a couple years ago at WrestleMania, and saying Triple H said, we own the bitch now. And then Triple H getting mad, and then Kurt saying, well, Stephanie said in the back that you're a has-been and she could take you no matter what. Ronda instantly switched from this giddy schoolgirl to this badass, and they're billing her as the baddest woman on the planet. Well, she fucking looked it on Sunday, and boom, Triple H came back. She gave Triple H a belly-to-belly through the table. Stephanie then slapped Ronda, and it's on. And it looks like the way they've built it, especially they kind of redid somewhat of a similar angle on Monday night, where Triple H ended up hitting Kurt Angle. Then it's going to be Kurt Angle and Ronda versus Stephanie and Triple H. I think that's going to be phenomenal. I think it allows Triple H and Kurt not so much abuse on their body in this type of match. It allows Ronda to get her kind of feet wet in her first match. A lot of mainstream publicity will come to this match because that's typically what WrestleMania is. It's the outside people, the general wrestling fan getting those eyes on the product. Ronda's the perfect person to have that do. All the MMA fans, all the mainstream media she's gotten from doing movies are going to come right in and check it out. So I think that's going to be perfect. I think that match is going to be awesome. And then the final match at Elimination Chamber was the men's Elimination Chamber. First time they had 7 guys in there. And I thought they did. It was interesting because I think everybody knew the telegraph was coming. Roman was going to win. But they kept Braun Strowman looking really strong. Braun Strowman eliminated everybody. He eliminated The Miz first, Then he eliminated John Cena. Then he eliminated Finn Balor. He eliminated Elias. He eliminated everybody. And then it came down to Roman and Braun. Roman would end up getting the victory, but at the end of the night, Braun would take Roman, throw him through the pond, and Braun kept himself looking strong. But what was crazy about this whole thing was everybody was not thrilled. We're going to get Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Roman's not over. He doesn't have that emotional connection with the crowd. Everybody was like, oh, this is going to be the main event at WrestleMania. Well, this past Monday, Roman Reigns cut the best promo of his career, and he made some good points that, apparently Brock Lesnar no-showed, and there's still rumors on the dirt sheets of whether Brock actually no-showed or it was just part of the storyline, but Brock's contract is up here shortly after WrestleMania, and a few years ago he did the same thing, and this past Sunday he was in Vegas, and there were pictures of him online with Dana White, the president of the UFC, but he wasn't at the WWE pay-per-view. So it's kind of a little bit of Brock's using the UFC maybe, again, to get as leverage to get more money, but it's starting to become a nuisance to all us wrestling fans because Brock has mentioned he doesn't give two shits about WWE, about the wrestling business. He only does this for money, and Roman came out and basically said that in his promo on Monday night that Brock's a part-timer, he doesn't care about the business, he doesn't respect the business, and basically called him a little bitch that he's a part-timer and gets to come and go as he please. The crowd started cheering. I even got behind it, and maybe if they let Roman be a little bit more real like this, there's an opportunity that Roman can get himself over and be that face of the company. So it's going to be interesting in the next 6 weeks here as we get closer to WrestleMania, how they build this match. Some of the other matches they're going to be building looks like we're going to get a triple threat between Seth, Miz, and Finn for the Intercontinental title. Braun's kind of in lingo. Looks like we are going to get the John Cena-Undertaker match. This past Monday, John Cena mentioned The Undertaker. You don't mention The Undertaker if it's not going to happen. So I think we're going to get that. And I think we're going to get a really, really good WrestleMania coming up here in the next 6 weeks. But I did pretty well in the predictions. If you listened last week, did real good. Got pretty close to just about every match right. The only one I was really off was the Asuka Nia Jax. I thought that would be a non-finish, but Asuka did get the win. So pretty good on my predictions. Maybe once we get to WrestleMania, I'll do a WrestleMania episode and see how I come out on those predictions. Once again, I want to thank you for listening. Make sure that you follow on all the social media. The Twitter handle is Nick's R&W Podcast. Find on Facebook, Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Also a Gmail if you want to send in any comments, any questions, Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. So Twitter, Facebook. Coming weeks here, we'll get a YouTube channel going up for the podcast. And coming up shortly, we'll get Royce Isaacs, independent wrestler sensation. But as we're speaking about Elimination Chamber, we've got our first little promotion here. It's that time of year in the spring where you may want to eliminate some of the things from your backyard or house. So, nobody better to call than Power Junk and Removal Hauling. Let the Power Crew haul it for you. They're a family-owned and operated business. They specialize in junk removals, property cleanouts, demolitions, and hauling. Check them out online at powerjunkremoval.com. Coming up next, Royce Isaacs. All right, I'm here with Royce Isaac. I guess you could say world-renowned independent wrestler.
You can say that. I'm not going to say that, but I appreciate it. You can definitely say that.
So first, I always like to do this when I get guys on the show is kind of like, because I know some guys, they stumble into pro wrestling, or is that thing, were you always a fan and that's how you got into the business, or was it kind of like I'm an athlete and I found this later type thing?
No, I definitely, I always loved wrestling growing up, and that was one of my me and my dad would always watch whatever wrestling was on. Usually I was definitely a Raw guy more so than Nitro, but I watched plenty of both brands. And I mean, luckily I also grew up when it was the hottest era, where it was the Attitude Era and Stone Cold and The Rock. And so, I mean, it was just a natural fit for me. And then doing sports gosh, pretty much all my life. Since I was a little kid, different. I played hockey as a kid, football, amateur wrestling, soccer. I kind of did a little bit of everything. So once my athletic career was, at the time, I thought over after college. I was still itchy for something, and I don't know, I had this itch in the back of my throat. Like I always kind of thought maybe wrestling would be the thing for me. Maybe I could do that.
Okay, cool. So that's weird that you say you're a Raw guy because I was a Nitro guy. I don't
You
know.
were a Nitro guy.
I was a Nitro guy because of Sting. Like Sting was my guy.
Hell yeah.
But then as I grew, like I mean, obviously WCW got terrible through the years. So I was kind of like,
No, really? What happened to them? Are they still around? What's going on?
So I was kind of like, all right, well, man, I'm gonna go over here, and I was like, dude, Stone Cold's the man, because I was the same. I'm probably close to the same age as you. I was growing up during the Attitude Era. I was like,
Sure.
God damn, this is like the hottest the business ever been.
Of course.
Because my older brother was like, Jesus, he's like, this is way better than when I was watching in the '80s. Like, this more realistic to it.
Yeah, people are actually, you can have heroes that aren't necessarily just like, oh boy, come on, let's do this. There's you flesh out your characters. It's a lot more interesting. It's a 3D kind of thing rather than just like a paper thin. I'm the good guy. I'm the bad guy.
Yeah. So, because the business is really healthy right now, because would you say you're close to doing this full time and that you've traveled? What have you traveled to Japan?
Yeah, I've been doing the Japan thing. I just did my first show in Mexico last week, and I should have some more of those coming up for sure. Really need to break into the European market for sure, but I mean, even in the time that I've been wrestling, the independent scene is definitely healthier than it was when I first got into the business. And also, when I first got in, it used to be a bad thing to be, if you were an indie wrestler, you couldn't get signed. Like, I remember if you had that, TNA stink or whatever, and now it's like they're signing all kinds of Impact guys. They're signing all kinds of indie guys. WWE is definitely looking at a different kind of wrestler than they were, even 3 or 4 years ago, which is good. It's healthy for the business, I think.
So you're from SoCal, and obviously I do a lot of features with guys.
Well, sort of from SoCal. I'm a Colorado boy, Mile High City, and I gotta show love for my state because I just moved to SoCal in October. But I do live in SoCal. I don't mean to nitpick, but
hey, being from NorCal, that's fine, man. The SoCal guys, the people that grow up there are a little bit different.
Are they Holly Weird or whatever? Yeah, okay.
So, how is coming up to NorCal when you come up here and you wrestle? Because this weekend you did PBW in Petaluma,
Yep.
PCW in Orville.
Yep.
How is the scene? How would you compare like a SoCal NoCal thing? Because I've been in bands and it's so different. Like up here, it's like everybody's friends. Then you go down to SoCal and it's like I'm a big fucking rock star and this and that type thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, at the end of the day, wrestling is wrestling, and wrestlers are wrestlers. We're all twisted fucks, so that's kind of consistent throughout. I don't know. I have a ton of friends in SoCal. I have a ton of friends up here. I actually I broke into the NorCal market before I ever broke into SoCal. When I moved to SoCal, part of it was, well, I'm way closer to NorCal and I'm closer to Vegas, where I already have a pretty good foothold, but I pretty much had never worked a SoCal show. The closest show I had probably worked to a SoCal show was SenCal in San Luis Obispo, which is in the middle of, in between NorCal and SoCal. So I really wasn't a SoCal guy before I moved there, but I'm really into taking big, dumb leaps of faith and hoping that I can figure it out along the way. So I did.
So now that you're kind of based in SoCal, was it you started in Colorado and just gradually moved your way west in the indie scene, or because I've never really been outside of California to see a wrestling show, so I don't know like what other indie scenes are going on in different states.
Sure. Yeah. Denver's scene is definitely doing a lot better now. When I first started out, it wasn't doing great. There was no promotions that anyone would really know about. A lot of the people that were running then are still running, but I just mean at the time, I guess they weren't really known about. I legitimately had been thinking about maybe just moving somewhere else to learn how to wrestle, because I really at that point was getting itchy. I wanted to wrestle. I wanted to try it out. And even, Googling online for where's a wrestling school near me, I couldn't find anything in Colorado. It wasn't until I stumbled onto a local show, and actually my friend's girlfriend now wife, stumbled onto a local show, and he ended up taking me. And so I started training maybe 2 days after that because I got in with all those guys. But really, it was just I started training in Colorado. I started doing shows in Colorado. I just got booked on as many shows, no matter if they were big, small, good, bad, whatever. And I don't know. I had a trainer that was very, hey, you got to get out there. If you want people to see your stuff, you got to get out there. And I had some good influences, like Sam Udell. He now wrestles as Dak Draper for NWL in Kansas City, who was, a good road partner and telling me to get out there. So I started driving to places like Utah, the northern parts of Texas, Amarillo, stuff like that, Wyoming, Nebraska, places like that were a little bit closer. And managed to make some connections, started doing some shows in Vegas. I hooked up with the big homie Sledge, he used to run SenCal. He's still one of their talents. And I wrestled him in Denver, and it was like, hey, man, I really need to break into the California scene. And he's like, well, I run a promotion, so you're at least booked one place. And it's just kind of, it's one of those things that the more networking, the more connections you make. It's like this flower that, the petals bloom out, and you meet more and more people, and it becomes, more profitable shows, better shows, more exposure, all that stuff.
So then that through your connections, that's how you kind of got the Japan kind of deal through that?
Actually, if I'm being really honest, I got the Japan deal through, just trying to get the Japan deal. At one point, I don't know exactly what it was, but I was just like, you know what? I'm sick of not going the places I want to go to. I'm sick of not working the places I want to work. And I'm sick of, just kind of being stuck in this position that I'm in right now. And so Japan's always been a dream. Even before I was a wrestler, you can look on my Instagram, shameless plug at Royce Isaacs, but there's pictures of me as a little kid. I have, my mom made me some fake samurai armor. I've always been really into Asian cinema. Japan's always been a goal for me. So it was just like, all right, who are the Japanese promotions I know? I don't care that I don't have any ins. I'm just going to message all of them. I'm going to just send out emails, send out resumes, send out matches, send out promo pics. And DDT responded. I just reached out over Facebook, I want to say, like Facebook Messenger. DDT responded. At first, they didn't really have anything for me, and then I got really lucky. They were having a tournament, and I want to say someone got injured, and they were kind of like, hey, here's the deal. We have this spot for you. Are you interested? And we got it all worked out, and before I knew it, I was going to Japan. But it's really one of those things. A lot of people would, especially after, hey, how do I get in there? It's like, well, have you tried just messaging someone? A lot of times, no one's going to discover you. No one's going to be out there just like, oh boy, I should really hope that I find the next person to, be $1 million draw or whatever, the next person I need, unless you're, I don't know, Ricochet or Brian Cage or something. There's just something so self-evident. You have to apply for jobs. And I know those guys are working hard. Those guys are getting out there. Those guys are doing their thing. I just mean, you have to be your own advocate. You have to, you can sit there and be like, oh man, I never got that job that I wanted. Did you apply? Did you do an interview? Like, if you don't do that, it's very unlikely that someone's just going to come up to you one day and be like, hey, I have the job of your dreams. Do you want it? So apply, go out there, talk to people, find a way.
That's awesome. Just applying, just through social media, which is such a big advocate. I mean, getting booked. I know getting booked at Japan back in the day, it was like a secret code. Like,
sure, but I mean, even back then, you had to know people, you had to make connections, you had to talk to people, you had to get your stuff out there. Then you're sending tape. Maybe you're sending tape overseas. That's going to take forever to get over there, and hopefully someone goes and watches your stuff. But I mean, even then, there's never a time in your life when you're just going to stumble into. If you do, then great for you. If you win the lottery, then you know what? Congratulations. I'm happy for you, and that's great. But over 99% of us aren't just going to win the lottery. So you got to, take things into your own hands, and I think that's true of any era.
So when you go over to Japan, because I've always been curious about this, and now I'm getting talked to an actual wrestler that's wrestled over there, is the communication barrier. How does that work? Because I know, like, a guy like Jericho, I've listened to do interviews, and he said he tried to learn the language, but it's such a daunting task. How do you communicate in terms of when you're in the ring, anything like that would come down to being in the business? You're like, Shit, I don't know how to speak Japanese. How do you communicate?
I Japanese, yes, it's a really tough language, especially for coming from English, where it's a romance language. It's a lot of things are reversed, a lot of grammar and all that kind of stuff. You can learn a few key words, but you're not going to be able to carry a conversation unless you studied it for a long time, maybe in school even. So there's definitely a language barrier. Luckily, the rest of the world isn't as ignorant as we always are, and a lot of them know some English. Also, wrestling moves are wrestling moves because wrestling was brought to them via the Americans. If you are calling some, if you're talking about a move, it's probably named the same thing, or maybe if you're doing like a split leg moonsault, you'd say, "Oh, I'll do the Rob Van Dam," because they'll know what the Rob Van Dam is, or the Stone Cold Stunner. You wouldn't call it just, a stunner or something like that. So it's real. I mean, I thought the language barrier wasn't that bad. Japan has a lot of they all learn at least a little bit of English. There's English signs everywhere. It's a very accessible country, so I never really had too much of a problem with that.
And then obviously, is the stylistically differently in the ring? Can you still do your stuff, or do you kind of adapt? Because obviously, the Japanese crowd is used to a certain, high fly, boom, boom, boom. More while the Americans, maybe a storytelling aspect. Do you have to kind of find a happy medium somewhere in there?
Honestly, I feel like Japanese wrestling still has very strong storytelling. Maybe they just tell it a little bit differently. I think that stylistically there are some differences, and you do want to take certain things into account. And if there's someone that's telling you, hey, maybe you should do something like this, or you know certainly be open to adaptability and changing and whatever. But at the end of the day, they have 100 Japanese wrestlers on the roster that wrestle like Japanese wrestlers. If they're bringing you in, they probably want a special attraction or something different. Otherwise, why would they pay all this money for a flight and put you up somewhere, pay you for your match? That's all that stuff is expensive and is costing them more than their own homegrown talent. So wrestle like yourself. Still go out there and be yourself, because that's going to set you apart and be different. But definitely also take little things here and there that you find that work and adapt to them. I don't think I've ever learned as much about wrestling in a 1 week period as I did during my first tour, when I did when I wrestled every day and I was in a tournament, this round robin tournament in Japan. It was like, oh wow, like rapid improvements every day, high pressure situations, sink or swim, and I don't know, you just figure out what works and what's good wrestling.
So once you kind of got booked over there, did it help kind of raise your stock once you came back to the United States in the indie scene? It was kind of like, oh, he's getting booked in Japan. Now he's got even more with him.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely helped. It's definitely a huge thing for me, and it's definitely helped me out a lot. I think it would have helped more if, honestly, if I would have been in SoCal already, just because it is already a bigger market. I think more people would have noticed, oh, this guy that's from here did this. But it's definitely helped me out, and hopefully it continues to help me out. And Japan has always been a dream, so it's really nice to be able to live my dreams, a few months at a time.
So since you're based in SoCal, how long have you been in the business per se? How many years? How many matches have you had? At a rough estimate. I know some guys keep track of them.
I do not.
You don't.
I'm not nearly that organized. If you saw my room or my car, you would already know that I'm not that organized. I started wrestling. I started training in April of 2014. I had my first match, I want to say, in June of 2014. So overall, in the large scale of things, I have not been doing this that long. I didn't get in until I was 25. I'm 29 now, so we're a little under 4 years. That said, I do pride myself in how much I've already been able to wrestle. Like I said, when I first started, it was just how many matches can I get, no matter what the show was. But even now, that I'm a lot more selective, I'm trying to be anywhere from 2 to 3 matches a week. I'd like to even wrestle more. I've had a few. Like I think I had 6 matches, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago in a weekend in a 3-day time span, and I was really happy with that weekend. Overall total matches, I don't really know, but I would say for the last 3 years, pretty consistently, I've done 10 matches a month, pretty much year round. Like if you averaged it out, so that would be 120 matches a year. So I'm probably around 400 matches or so, probably a little under that, between 350 and 400 matches, I'd guess. So that's a lot more telling because I know a lot of people that have been wrestling for, I don't know, 10 years and they've had, 120 matches, and it's like, well,
You only work once a month or whatever.
correct. Yeah, right. Yeah. So I don't know. And at the end of the day, just if someone's good at wrestling, they're good at wrestling. If they suck, they suck. And if they're in between, then they're in between. So hopefully the fans can make that determination for themselves.
So you said you did some collegiate wrestling, obviously, in high school, and I know a lot of the guys like Angle and other guys that have that little background. Did that, collegiate style really help grasp being a pro wrestler really a little bit quicker than you expected?
To a degree, yes. I did wrestle in college for 2 years as well. Cornell College, Mount Vernon, Iowa. Shout out to Mount Vernon, Iowa, because no one else is ever probably going to do that.
Iowa, really?
Yeah.
No, that's my family's from Iowa.
Where?
My mom was born in Rockwell City, which is like 30 minutes outside of Fort Dodge.
Okay.
So it's a real small little town. So that's kind of.
They all are pretty much, other than like Iowa City and Des Moines.
Iowa City and Des Moines. Other than that, because it so different back there. I'm like, what the hell?
Very different, different speed. Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, here's a town for like 2 seconds. Okay.
Threw a rock, it cleared the whole town. Yeah, it was like Field of Dreams outside my college, big cornfields and everything. It was beautiful though. I liked it. Good people too. The Midwest has really good people. But back to the original question about honestly, so I think the amateur wrestling really helped, especially with some of my like chain wrestling, just feeling comfortable grappling, feeling comfortable transitioning from hold to hold and move to move. But honestly, my overall just doing sports and having a sports background, I think really helped with wrestling with some of the mental toughness of being, knowing how to push yourself, having that, capacity that I've been through, 2-a-day practices where you don't have anything left and you've got to figure out a way, how am I going to do another practice later this afternoon because my legs are shot and, I'm in this ice bath and I'm miserable. The footwork that it takes to be a hockey player or a soccer player, I think all of my athletic background helped, and having that discipline, knowing coming up through a system where you're supposed to stay humble and keep your head up and your ears open, I think it gave me an advantage because there are some people that don't come from necessarily a traditional sports background and get into wrestling, and it's almost like a culture shock or a punch in the face. They don't know how to act in certain situations, but I definitely was lucky that that was status quo for me. That was what I'd been doing since I was 4 or 5 years old.
So, what are some of the favorite matches you've had so far? 4 or 5 years in the business. Who are some of the guys that are always fun to work with, that you've worked with multiple times, or a great learning experience with maybe a vet that you've had so far?
Yeah. I think that some of my best matches have been with Martin Casillas. That's Marty the Moth from Lucha Underground. That's definitely a good friend of mine, and we've beaten the shit out of each other on numerous occasions. He always brings the wood. Yeah.
They always say you beat the shit out of your friends a little bit better than you.
Yeah.
A stranger.
100%. 100%. And Sam Udell, Jack Draper. I've always had some good wars with him for sure. I was lucky enough to be in the ring with Paul London. I guess about a year and a half ago, and man. There was at some point during the match where I was just like, man, I think this is probably the best wrestler I've ever wrestled in my life. While it was happening, I was just like, oh, wow. Okay, cool. This is that level of wrestling. Got it. I had a really good match with Arya Davari. I just wish that I wasn't so green back when it happened, but he's the man. I'm really happy to see his success and that he's killing it now. Trying to think. Definitely a special match that was near and dear to me. Last October, I was able to wrestle in a match. It was me and Rey Mysterio. No, it was August. Sorry, me and Rey Mysterio tag teamed against Carlito and Chavo Guerrero
Wow,
Jr.
that's
And to
pretty
be on like
badass,
to be on the just the card with
Crazy.
them, and I was on the poster right next to these guys, and I'm in this match. That was surreal. That was really really cool.
That's awesome. So I know you've done some work with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, right?
Yes, sir.
So some of my listeners that have listened aren't, may not get that. What exactly is kind of Championship Wrestling? Is it an indie promotion or is it kind of on the rise? Because they do have a TV deal in some markets. I know that.
Yeah, I mean they're on the CW. That's national television right there. If you look at their like where there's TV. My mom lives in Denver. My dad lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and they were both able to watch me wrestle on TV this year. So I mean, I don't know if I certainly wouldn't call that indie. I'd call that national television. I understand that a lot of people think of it that way because they think anything that's not WWE, oh, that's independent wrestling. But I mean, to me, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is TV wrestling, and it's definitely not indie, at least not from my experience.
So what's the big difference when you have to, you go and wrestle there, and a TV versus just, hey, I'm going to a promotion to wrestle? Is there big? I know that some guys say that there can't be a big difference in terms of wrestling on a TV show versus I'm wrestling just, a normal show.
Sure. I mean, you have to keep in mind that when you're wrestling for TV, most of the people that you're wrestling for are not there in person watching you. When you're wrestling just for an independent crowd, wherever, you're going to, okay, so there's four sides to the ring. Pretty much outside of there is my target audience, and, no one else is really going to see this. Maybe it's recorded and it'll go on YouTube, but you really mostly have to worry about getting over with the fans that are right there, having those fans like you or hate you or whatever. But if you're wrestling, for a TV crowd, you're probably wrestling for mostly people that are actually not there. So you obviously have to keep that in mind. Where are the cameras? There's all kinds of cues and stuff you have to remember. It's not nearly as simple. There's a lot more that goes into the process. And I noticed that there's a lot of people that don't really know how to wrestle TV. Even some people that are on TV, because it's a tough skill. It's an acquired skill, and I don't know. There's a lot of factors without drawing the curtain back too much, I guess.
So obviously that being said, do you prefer working babyface or heel?
I'm a bad guy. Come on. Come on. Look at this mustache. People don't even know I have a mustache right now, unless they were at one of the shows this weekend, because this just happened. I've been bearded up. But no, I'm nefarious as hell, man. It's way more fun to, not have to worry about breaking rules. And I don't know, man. I don't know. There's something about getting people to hate you that's way more satisfying than getting people to like you. At least to me. Maybe that's because I'm twisted, but I love being a bad guy. Yeah. Final answer. Very strong. Very very strong answer. Yeah.
Love being the heel, the chicken shit heel kind of.
Nah, I'm a different kind of heel. I do my own. That's the thing, though. I think that people get too stuck into like, oh, well, I'm the good guy, so I have to do this, and I'm the bad guy, and I have to do that. And it's like, fuck that. Break down some barriers. Get creative. There's more than one archetype. There's more than one way to act. I mean, think about all the people in your life that maybe have pissed you off or have been heels to you. They certainly weren't all in the same way. If some dude was a douchebag to you in the line at Starbucks, it's not like you were like, oh, well, I'm going to talk to the manager, and he just starts cowering from you, and then he tries to pull your trunks into the counter or something like that. It's there's more levels to this shit than just either you're the strong, strapping babyface or the, oh no, I'm the heel and I can't wrestle and I'm scared of everything. So I don't know. Without just being like, well, this is what I am and whatever. I think I'm I guess more of an ass kicker heel. And I don't mean I'm a shitty babyface. I mean, like, you see me, I look intimidating physically, and I can be dirty, and I can be a shithead, and I can be a douchebag, but that doesn't mean I'm incompetent, and it doesn't mean I'm scared.
So along that lines of being a heel and stuff, what would you say? Because I'm always fascinated by character development and like certain characters, especially indies. You kind of really want to kind of think out of the box. What would you say you kind of had in mind when you got in the business, and how has it adapted over time in terms of what your character is?
Well, I think the biggest character thing was I always wanted to have a mustache, and now I finally do. So this character development, if you follow the arc of Royce Isaacs, at first, I was pretty, just stubble, and then, I had a beard. Before you knew it, I had a mustache. No,
that's marketing right there. You put the mustache on the T-shirt, boom. Right
the
there.
evolution of maybe I could have like how they have like the monkeys that evolve into humans. I'll have like stubble that evolves into a mustache. That'll be my shirt. That'll be my shirt, man. No, I think part of the interesting thing, especially on the indies, is at first I had no clue who the fuck Royce Isaacs was. I was just out there trying to see what worked and what I liked and what worked for me. And surprise, surprise, being kind of a cocky douchebag and having this money orientation and having this better than you attitude really resonated with me. And I don't know. So I guess being a jock all my life really got me ready for continuing to be a jock. And I don't know. It's one of those things that I slowly over time it was like, well, fuck, I saw this sweet ass coat online, and then I added that to the repertoire. And I've always really enjoyed having colorful, interesting gear. So I'm not that guy that prescribes to the babyface should wear all black, man, be mopey. Like nah, like I want to wear something. You can be a peacock and be annoying as hell too. So I think that goes with my flashiness and everything. And yeah, just you honestly, the biggest thing for me with character stuff was just trying out different stuff, seeing what worked. For a while, I was wearing glitter on my body just to like, oh man, maybe this will get me heat, and it did. It mostly got me heat with the other wrestlers that would get glitter all over themselves after my match, and then they'd have to explain to their girlfriends that they were not at the gentleman's club.
So, as obviously I said at the beginning, you didn't say it, but you're world renowned. I would say you've got some buzz around you. Have you?
I'll take it. I'll take it all day, man. You can say it as many times as you want.
Have you been in contact with any? I would say not the indie, but the bigger the ROHs or the Impact. Anything from WWE yet? Anything of that?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess without getting into too many specifics, I did do a tryout with WWE October 2016. Obviously, as I'm sitting here, I was not signed from that. Unfortunately, I think that was just an issue of wrong timing. I think if I would have maybe done that same tryout a couple months later, I would have been a little more mature, a little more ready for it. It is what it is. I don't have any regrets about that. I'm definitely trying to get on the radar at some other places that I guess are, giving out contracts and whatnot, or not giving them out, but signing people to contracts. And I'm trying to get on a few more. It's just tough. You gotta know the right people and put yourself in the right positions. But I'm definitely, without being too specific, working on that. As we speak every day. That is definitely part of the goal. I want to really share my my wrestling gift with as many people as possible and make as much money as possible.
So how is the WWE try? Like not maybe the behind the scenes stuff, but more just what I've heard that it's a very
fucking hard
physical, daunting task. What is that? What does a tryout for the WWE entail? Well,
it entails doing about 1,346 front rolls. You get physically and mentally exhausted, and then you have to go out there and perform. And it's tough. We did tons of drills and conditioning and lifting weights and just repetitive mental exercises to see how well you learned and how well you took to coaching and all that kind of stuff. So it was it was really tough. I did learn a lot, and if I get that opportunity again, I think I know the things that I'd have to do in order to put myself in a better position to win. But man, yeah, I guess to answer your question, it's really, really just physically exhausting and tough for sure.
So as we come to close here, I don't want to keep you for too long. I know you got to get yourself ready.
Man, I still got a match tonight, man. I've had 2 other matches this weekend. I got to drive back to SoCal. It's going to be a late night for me, man.
That is. So where can we find Roy Isaacs? Obviously, you've plugged the Instagram. Where can we find all of your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Check me out, obviously, at Royce Isaacs on Instagram and Twitter. I do have the Facebook as well, Royce Isaacs right there. Online, there's plenty of stuff on YouTube. There's also, if you're interested in seeing my work in Japan, DDT Universe. It's their I guess, network for lack of a better term. And it's a great service as well. All the like new matches that go up, they live stream them all. There's never been a problem with the stream on my end. And you have an access to DDT has a huge back catalog of stuff as well on there. You can check me out every week on the CW for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Definitely, if you like wrestling, give it a shot. See what you think of the show, because I think there's a really talented locker room there. I think they're doing some really special stuff there, and I mean it's a really cool dream come true for me to be wrestling on national television every week.
That's where I stumbled on too, because I was like, it was like a Saturday night at like 12 midnight, and I think I got home from the bar and I was like, wrestling's on? I was like,
hell yeah,
oh, check this out. And I'm like, all right, dude, there's like all kinds of different things. I think that's the nice thing about the business here is that like there's alternatives now to WWE where 10 or 15 years ago it was like one game in town.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that there's Lucha Underground. I love that there's Ring of Honor. I love that there's Impact. I love that there's Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. You don't walk into Baskin Robbins, oh, you want chocolate or vanilla? 32 flavors, baby. Give me more, and that's just more jobs and opportunities for wrestlers like myself.
Yeah, I mean, they're indie promotions. I tell people all the time, go see an indie promotion because it's like seeing a club band. Like, you're intimate, you're right there, close up.
Sometimes you get to see that next big star before he makes it, and you get to watch that unfold organically. That's a really cool experience to enjoy, and it's usually a lot cheaper than some of the bigger shows in town. So go out there if you're a fan and you want to see independent wrestling. I know it's like that trite phase of sport indie wrestling, but really do like legit go out there, watch the indie guys, buy their shirt, do their thing. I'm not trying to subliminally hint that you should buy my shirt, when you see me at a show, but you should definitely do that. But no, really though, support those indie wrestlers, those guys that are really breaking their necks and busting their asses trying to live this dream and entertain you.
All right, final question here, two-parter.
Oh boy.
Favorite match of all time, just the sport in general, and your favorite match you've had.
Whew, okay. Favorite match of all time, probably Stone Cold and Bret Hart WrestleMania, the double turn, or maybe one of like the Rock Austin WrestleMania matches. I don't know which one out of those three would be my favorites, but one of those for sure. That's the four matches is the narrowest I can get it down to. If you can't tell, I'm a Stone Cold fan.
Hey, I'm a big time. I tried to narrow it down one day too. I'm like, those Rock Austin, the trilogy. I was like, I actually like the 19 one the best for some reason. I don't know why.
I can't hate on that.
That just Stone Cold's last match. Everything about that was like just
special,
fucking brilliant.
Yeah, man. Yeah, yes. I absolutely, and I will watch Stone Cold. But a lot of people, like punchy, kicky. No, like realism. Watch him throw those hands, man.
I've never been to a damn. I don't think I've been to an event or anything where I've never heard the crowd pop for so.
Oh my god!
Glass breaks. Shit was
it's over. It's over, man. Sploosh for sure. It's and I mean, talk about artists painting a picture with their hands, man. It's beautiful, beautiful violence. And then the second part was my favorite, personal.
Yeah, your personal favorite you've had.
Oh man, that's a tough question. I really like. I had favorite match of all time is really hard because I feel like you kind of view everything that's more recent through like a rose-colored lens. Recently, I had a match with Eric Watts that I really liked on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. That's definitely up there. And let's see, probably one of my matches in Japan. I'm trying to think of what would even be my favorite one from over there. Maybe I did a tag match that was me and Diego versus Koju Takeda and Yuki Ueno, and I really, really liked that match. So that's probably the best I can say. But honestly, I'm sure if I look back through my career, I would have a really hard time. I like different matches for different reasons. Those are just the ones that are in the front of my mind right now.
So, all right. So Royce Isaacs on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Please follow me. I need the followers. I need to be more famous and more popular online. So please follow.
So I appreciate you coming on. It was a joy talking to you, man.
Yeah, man, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And no, it was a great interview. I definitely, if you, I guess I was gonna say listen to it, but if you've listened this far, congratulations. If you're a fan and you've listened to this entire thing, hey, pat yourself on the back. Take your hat off to yourself. You've done it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I want to thank Royce Isaacs for coming on again this week. I definitely mean it when I say he's an independent sensation. He's going to be a big star coming down the road. If you go to a lot of independent shows in your area, definitely tell your local promoter to book Royce. He's been all over the place. You can check him out on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. It's on the CW. Check your local market to see when that is on weekly television for you. Definitely was cool to talk about the WWE tryout he had, and hopefully one day we will see him in the WWE being a big star, especially around this time getting ready for WrestleMania. So if you see Royce Isaacs coming to your town to wrestle, definitely go check him out. Phenomenal competitor. So I definitely want to thank him for coming on once again. So in the coming weeks here, next week, we will have another guest, another independent wrestler right here from the Northern California area. His name is Andrew Arch. Longtime friend of mine. We talked a lot about just wrestling in general and such, and he'll be on next week. As we draw nearer to WrestleMania. I've got some bigger guests coming up in the following weeks too, from the wrestling world, from the rock and roll world. So definitely make sure you keep listening. Once again, you can check us out. You can check the podcast out on Twitter, which it's Nick's R&W Podcast is the Twitter handle. You can also go on Facebook, find it at Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast, and a Gmail account if you have any questions, any suggestions. Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. All three of those are great ways to get a hold of me. As for any information you want, any suggestions for the podcast, send them my way. Definitely look forward to hearing from you. And next week, Andrew Arch will be the guest. Once again, want to thank Royce Isaacs for coming on, and I definitely enjoyed the chat we had. Make sure you keep up on all the latest wrestling, any rock and roll bands that are coming, any guest suggestions. Anybody out there have a suggestion for a guest or want to send them my way to have a discussion, I'd be glad to have them on. And make sure you check out next week as Andrew Arch will be on. So we'll see you next week right here on Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast.